Hello again, everybody. It's Lori White from the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, back again with episode number 136 of Chamber TV. And today we're talking about a really cool topic, something that is on the minds of small business people, professionals everywhere, those that are wearing their marketing hats and ask themselves the question, how do I get discovered more readily, more quickly in my e-commerce business? And we have an expert with us today, Tom Canterino, and Tom is the founder of LevelUP Digital Solutions, member of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled to be able to partner with Tom today for a masterclass, if you will, on search engine optimization and how to be found inside of Google for the benefit of your business and getting more traction, more customers, and more attention. So, hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. So we are live on all three of our traditional platforms. We are live on Facebook, we are live on Twitter, and we are live on YouTube. We welcome your questions as we're going along. If you hear something that you're not quite sure of, drop us a message in the chat box, and we will be posing all of your questions to Tom after his presentation. So we want to make sure that you leave here with a complete understanding of what you need to know today in 2021 to be relevant to Google and the various search engines and how to amplify your entire marketing strategy. So Tom, I am going to turn it over to you to get started with our masterclass.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if we can pull the slide deck up. You can go to the next one, please. So thanks for making the time, everyone. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm Tom Canterino, and I am the owner and founder of LevelUP Digital Solutions. I founded the company about 7 years ago, and really at that time, we were just building websites for friends and families and local businesses and consulting for to get more leads and more lead generation for their respective businesses, if you will. So, and then 3 years into the business, clients were saying, okay, we have a great website now. What do we do with it? And I want to get it out in front of people and get more exposure. So that's really where SEO comes into play, search engine optimization, which we're going to talk about today. And just a bit of background, the three things we do really well at our agency: web design, lead generation, review and reputation, and of course, SEO in both locally and across all the different directories. Next slide, please. So of course, everyone knows about the quote unquote always online world that we live in today. And the biggest driver of this is really the mainstream adoption of smartphones. So you really can't go outside without seeing a person on a sidewalk, unfortunately, hunched over, staring at you at their phone, probably walking into you. So we've seen a huge paradigm change in the way that we use online. And now that we live in this brutally, profusely online world, if you will. Next slide. So when people think of an online world, they normally think of huge companies like Amazon, Airbnb, but what people often overlook is how this change has really affected the landscape for local businesses. The truth is that the customer journey for local businesses really has had a major shakeup in the last few years. When we look at various touch points, we can see exactly how today's customer is in far more control than they used to be. The old approach for local businesses would be to really invest in traditional advertising like print, telemarketing, but really these mediums, they might work, but they're no longer as strong as they used to be. People at the end of the day, we can all probably agree to this, are looking for local businesses on Google or Bing or the alike. When they're looking at those platforms when they want and when it's most convenient for them and not anyone else. So really personal recommendations are essentially no longer really required. Today's consumer can now get the options of hundreds of people in seconds through online reviews rather than just getting one person's subjective opinion. And the truth is, customers today have access to more information than ever before. And all of this is really good for the customer as it makes their lives far easier. Most people these days don't want a pushy salesperson, right? They don't want to do their own research online to learn as much as they can. They do want to do their own research online to learn as much as they can. Then they'll buy when they're ready and fully educated. So today, once a customer has reached out to you, they're far further down the sales funnel than where they would have been 15 or so years ago. Not only that, but if a business has a great online reputation, then customers will be far easier to sell to, and essentially they will be happily spend more with you as well. Next slide. What's interesting now is how online is actually driving offline sales. Even if a local business is recommended by a friend, today's customer will still check out the business online before they ever contact them. One interesting statistic I find fascinating is that 78% of mobile local searches result in offline purchases. So essentially not investing in your online visibility is really no longer an option for really any business that is looking to grow their reach and their revenue. Next slide. So high-performing local businesses really have figured out just how important investing in local search marketing actually is. A recent study by Google found that small businesses that are making the most use of online are actually 2.8 times more likely to enjoy revenue growth than those that simply do not. Next slide, please. So on the other hand, over half a million businesses in the US close every year. And one of the biggest reasons companies struggle is because they simply fail to adopt their businesses to really succeed in this new online first forward landscape. Next slide. So what we essentially do is we help companies make that transition. Our ultimate goal is to help local businesses generate more leads online, whether that's getting more phone calls, emails, walk-ins, online sales. We want to attract and activate customers because we know that a lot of folks are primarily going to need to find you, and you're going to need to show up on that first page of Google. Next slide, please. So just a quick case study of a company that we worked with. They were locally based, and they also had a few other they had chains across the country. And putting in some of the processes in place that we're going to go over today, these are some of the results that we've been able to bring them. We've been able to get them increased revenue, more customers in the door, and all at a time when there has been some COVID restrictions and restraints on various businesses. Next slide, please. This is another case study as well that we've worked with a local plastic surgeon. Of course, during this time, we know that for the time that we were all in quarantine and kind of in our own homes, and the spike in online searches and online sales has dramatically increased. So local businesses, we've been partnering with a bunch of local businesses to try to make sure that they are getting the exposure that they need in order to, one, show up before their competitors, and to also just show up there in general. At the end of the day, a lot of people are wondering really, how do we do this, and how do you do it, and what do we do to make this all a reality? Next slide. So really, at the end of the day, the how is local SEO. So we help our clients through a practice that is called search engine optimization, SEO, and this essentially helps their businesses rank higher on Google, where the people and potential customers are searching for their services. So these are the kinds of leads that really everybody wants because they are self-qualified and have a genuine need for your services. Any businesses that serve customers in a specific location essentially need local SEO. Google makes up about 90% of all search engine traffic. So we primarily are going to focus on Google's algorithm today, which is ever changing. The team and myself are we study and we try to translate Google's updates on an ongoing basis because the landscape is forever changing. So Google really has a different algorithm to rank local searches versus non-local searches. An example of a local search is, think of someone types into Google, lawyers in Manhattan. An example of a non-local search might be Sony 43-inch TV, because this is a product that's not tied to a physical location. Next slide, please. So when we look to improve rankings on Google, we first need to understand what Google wants. Quite simply, all Google wants to do is give the searcher the best possible result for their query. Next slide, please. So if we dig into this, if we dig a little deeper into this, so Google uses a local algorithm to work out which results they think are best. And essentially, it's broken up into three simple elements: proximity, relevance, and prominence. Next slide, please. So the first one is proximity. This is essentially how far away the business's location is from the person making the search. As an example, if you are a lawyer based in Chicago, someone searches for lawyers in Manhattan, believe it or not, you're never going to appear in the results. So proximity is a metric that you can't control or influence. You can't decide where someone searches from or what city they search for. Next slide. The next metric that we look at is relevance. So this is essentially how well your business's online presence matches what the searcher has searched for. A simple example of this is that if you're a lawyer and someone searches for a plumber, again, believe it or not, you're never going to appear in the results. Now, this is obviously an extreme example, but it's layered, right? So as another example, if you're an employment lawyer and a person searches for an immigration lawyer, it's unlikely that your business will be returned ahead of businesses that are purely specialized in immigration law. Next slide, please. And the final element Google uses is prominence. So this is how Google determines which business has the most trust through a variety of elements such as reviews, links, and content. And we'll dive into a bit more of that right now. Next slide, please. So Google uses different algorithms for the two types of results you see when you make a local search. The first is the local pack results. Some people call it the 3-pack, and which is the section that you see on screen here. This is the 3 Google listings that sit at the top of the search result, right below any Google paid ads. So every year, there's an SEO company called Moz that surveys some of the most recognized local SEO practitioners to really learn what they think are the key factors that affect local ranking. And essentially what this survey gives us is a really useful breakdown to help visualize the factors Google uses to rank businesses. So we incorporate, at LevelUP, we incorporate this into the work we complete for our clients and customers to essentially help drive more leads and more visibility for their businesses. Next slide, please. And also Google has a separate algorithm for the organic results, which are the blue links you see below the local map pack. These organic results are still based on the location of the searcher or query. So we call them localized organic results. We focus on both algorithms to help our clients drive more leads from Google, because essentially some would argue, but they can be tied together. Or they feed off of each other. We strictly believe in full transparency with our clients and those that we work with. So I want to show you each factor and the actual work that we do to help build an authority for our clients inside of Google and the search engines. Next slide, please. So we can see here that Google My Business, some also call it a GMB, makes up about 25% of these algorithm signals. This is essentially a free listing that Google gives you to complete control over. If someone searches for your business on Google, this is what will appear on the right-hand side of the page. So it's normally the first thing prospects will see when they look for you online. If your Google My Business profile hasn't been properly optimized, then you'll really never succeed in a local search, period. There's a lot of room for error and there is a lot of room for error when setting up and managing a Google My Business listing, especially for business owners who might be too busy actually running their business to read through the research on best practices. This is why when we start working with a client, this is one of the first things that we review. And some would also argue this can be your second website. We're seeing a lot of engagement, a lot of traffic. Once you're in that 3-pack, which is very competitive to get in that 3-pack, depending on the niche, we're seeing about 60 to 70% of lead conversion and awareness being driven through a highly optimized Google My Business listing. Next slide, please. So this is a professional approach, and it's also our approach. So in terms of what work we complete for the folks that we work with in regards to a GMB listing, it really all starts by uncovering which search terms people are actually searching for. We use various tools to pull back the total number of local searches on Google every month for each of our client services. This helps us identify which search terms we need to optimize for. As an example, if there are 300 people a month searching for Nissan dealerships, but there's 700 people a month searching for Nissan car dealers, we want to make sure we're really optimizing the client's Google My Business profile for the search term with the higher volume. From there, we'll run research on the top performing competitors' profile and really build on this for the profile. We also do a complete audit of the data in the profile and make sure we add compelling descriptions, add images that are geotagged. These are just some of the strategies and tactics that really drive conversion, really for anyone that might be looking for or looking at your business. Another key area we work on in the Google My Business profile is the Q&A section. These questions and answers are really prominent on your profile and are like communities, and essentially they're community sourced FAQs that live on the listing. And we post brand friendly FAQs for you to help convert users that see them on the profile. We also monitor these to make sure they give the best impression of your business. We also continuously create Google posts. These are like social media updates that live on your Google My Business profile. They too help drive conversions from your listing and are really a good signal to Google that your business is active, ticking away, and relevant. Next slide, please. So this is what we call a GMB Heat Map tool that we use. This is something that surprises a lot of people when we first start engaging. We like to start with whenever we're going to work with a new client or customer, we always take an educational approach. We want to make sure whomever we're working with feels completely comfortable with the materials that we're presenting, and they get an understanding on what's going to unfold and their current stance in the market. At the end of the day, SEO can be a bit confusing, but we try to not only educate but we try to simplify things to best of our ability. So what you're seeing on screen is is really painting a picture that the search results you see is not what other people see. So a lot of people will be in their office and they will be searching for a keyword or a brand name or whatnot, and they'll be like, oh, I come up first on the first page of Google. But essentially, it's all dictated based on your location. So if you're sitting in your headquarters, you're of course going to always come up on that first page, that first set. So it really depending on where you are, when you do your search, the results will be different. So it begs the question, how can people find your business if they are not physically near it? So if we take a look at this example GeoGrid, the graphic shows what position a business shows up in Google search results, depending on where the search happened. So all these little dots, you'll see the green is probably where the business is located. And so if someone is going to be searching on is going to be sitting in their car on one of the orange dots, they are essentially not the business will not be found. So if we take a wild guess, it's the business is probably somewhere in the green area. So we use this to our advantage, and then we put a strategy in place to make sure that we are expanding the reach over time, to make sure we're covering more of the area and that we're coming in on that 1, 2, 3 section for the Google My Business profile. Next slide, please. So this is another example. So when we use our tool, we're able to drill down to really see exactly who are the competitors that are in the spots that we might want to be in. We can use that to our advantage and then do our research on those competitors, see what they might be doing well, what they're currently ranking against and what they're ranking for. And then we can use that in our strategy as well. Everything we do is completely white hat, which means it's the status quo and it's best practice. There's a lot of black hat or bad business type of practices that you can do out there to really try to outrank. But Google is really getting a lot smarter on being the bad cop now, and they have been suspending and deactivating Google My Business listings for the past few years very, very aggressively. So we want to make sure that everything we do is in a really authentic manner. Next slide, please. So another one of the one of Google's algorithm is what we call link signals, which is about 16% of that overall algorithm. So links are crucial ranking factors for Google. Think of links as votes or endorsements of your business's competence, quality, and character. So for example, if a respected university or industry publication links to your website, they are really endorsing your business and putting their own reputation at risk should you prove unworthy of their recommendation. It's the same with peers and partners. Vouching for you in the form of a link puts their own reputation at risk. So for instance, if LevelUP has if we have a business link or directory on Better Business Bureau, Better Business Bureau is one of the is a very authoritative and trusted website. So essentially, Google is you're going to get a lot of quote unquote link juice from just simply having a directory build out on on the Better Business Bureau. Very similarly, Chamber of Commerce websites are extremely trusted and authoritative. So even having a listing on a Chamber of Commerce website will help with the overall rankings. But at the end of the day, links are costly because they are not a commodity to be bought and sold. Essentially, they have to be earned. You have to give people a reason to link to you. You have to consistently provide clear, differentiated, high quality goods and services, and including in many instances, blog content that is sought after, unique, valuable. So as a local business, it can be difficult to acquire links for a business's website, really without the right knowledge. Next slide, please. So the first stage of a link strategy for the folks that we work with is really completing a link audit to understand what the current link profile is like, and to identify and remove any potential harmful links. We also need to assess how the link profile compares to your competition in order to really fully understand exactly what is required from a link building campaign. So really, link building is similar to relationship building in many ways, and it needs to be earned. Other websites don't like linking out to websites for really just the fun of it. So we'll look to leverage really existing relationships that the folks that we work with have. This could be with local organizations you have relationships with. This helps your site get some quick wins through relationships you've already built. We'll also seek out new sponsorship opportunities with local schools and charities that can link back to you. We also look to target business directories, which can provide links to your site to grow your authority. And lastly, we approach bloggers and other relevant sites to really write content for them in exchange for a link. All of these approaches help grow your link profile and, at the end of the day, your authority within Google. Next slide, please. So our next signal is review signals. So we've seen a huge change over the past 5 years in the power that the customer voice has on every business. Online reviews has been growing in importance since the smartphone adoption. Online reviews don't just affect your ratings, they impact every stage of the customer's buying journey. We break down the journey down into 3 sections: discover, evaluate, and trust. So the first stage is discovery. Having more positive online reviews, you have a better chance of ranking higher in local searches on Google and on other sites. This means new potential customers are more likely to find your business when they're searching. The next stage is in the journey is evaluation. Your customers might be evaluating you on Google. As a potential customer evaluates your listing and star ratings, they're also evaluating your competitors as well. If you look at your Google My Business page, you will also see Google does a great job of putting your competitors right below your Google My Business profile. So more often than not, they will reach out to the business with the best reputation. The benefit of having great online reviews are that they make you rank higher. Then they're essentially getting you more clicks and calls than your competitors. Finally, online reviews help build trust in abundance. A business with a great online reputation will establish great trust with a prospect before they've even spoken to them. So not only will you rank higher and get more clicks and calls, but customers will be easier to sell to and, frankly, more likely to buy from you because of your online reviews. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we complete is an audit of a business's reviews and benchmark them against their top performing competitors. We always look to introduce a review generation strategy as well. The big challenge with online reviews is that an unhappy customer is far more likely to leave a review than a happy customer. We use very sophisticated software and services for the folks that we work with that works by asking your customers to leave reviews on the most important sites, essentially helping to drive your online reputation. Through the reporting we do, we also make sure that customers get quick responses to reviews to improve trust signals. Next slide, please. The next signal is on-page signals. Which is basically everything that lives on your website, everything that Google sees when they crawl it. Next slide, please. There's a vast range of metrics to consider when optimizing on-page signals. When we engage with a client, we'll always run a full site audit in the first month to make sure the site is sending all the right signals to Google. And some of the areas we assess are title tag and header tag reviews. Is there enough content, and is it locally relevant? Are there clear calls to action on the site to help drive conversions? Is it easy for a user to navigate and get in contact? Marketers know that we have about 3 to 5 seconds to capture someone that comes to our website. So if they're coming to your website just to make a phone call, we want to make sure that phone number is somewhere very visible right on that home page, and that it is clickable. And if it's clickable, right if you're on your mobile device, they can click it and it'll immediately call your business. And then to that point, we want to make sure the website is mobile optimized and mobile responsive. We're seeing about much more engagement on mobile devices going to websites than we are just strictly on a desktop. Next slide, please. So one of the final signals is what we call citations. A local citation, also known as a business listing or online directory listing, is any place online that displays your business's name, address, phone number. So Google goes to sites like Yelp and Yellow Pages to essentially validate the data that they have for your business. If Google finds that the data doesn't match for whatever reason, or is missing a certain piece of data altogether, this can essentially hurt your ability to appear in the search results. At the end of the day, Google is just a robot, and they have what's called spider bots that are essentially crawling all of our web pages and all of our content. So since they do not have a human brain behind them, they're utilizing these citation signals to try to validate what you populated, whether on your website or in your Google My Business profile. So having a strategy to make sure, one, all the data across all the directories are accurate, but also always expanding your directory and citation profile. And Google can even be as something that can really hurt the ability or hurt a trust signal is having a phone number that's off a bit, or having the wrong email address or a wrong physical address. All those things need to be the same throughout. Next slide, please. So what we normally do in regard to citations is we run a full audit of the citations of the given business, making sure that we build out and clean up citations on the most powerful directories to ensure all the business data is listed and is 100% correct. This, at the end of the day, ensures optimal visibility in Google for your business. Next slide, please. So what you can do right now, I'm going to provide a free guide that we put together, which will really help guide a local business through the process of ensuring your GMB, Google My Business profile, is first and foremost set up correctly. We're going to send out the document at the end of this webinar through your emails, so be on the lookout for that. I think it's about 20 or 30 pages. some really great visuals, and it really kind of walks you through step by step on the proper ways to make sure you're utilizing your Google My Business page to the best of your ability. Next slide, please. And then lastly, we're happy to, normally when we work with the first step, when we get approached by any local business looking for help with getting more visibility, is we always start with, as I mentioned, an educational phase. So what we do is we run a complete, it's complimentary, there's no strings attached. It is a free local SEO report and audit. And what we do is we package that all together, and we spend about 45 to an hour with you, and we walk through where you're currently ranking. We put a bunch of those heat maps up on screen so you can actually see the keywords that you are ranking for or are not. We're going to provide a lot of different recommendations on things you can do, things that we can do to really help you get more visibility. Anyone interested in to get a free local SEO report, there's a very quick link. It's levelupdigitalagency.com and then /chamber. There's a few simple questions. Once we get some of those questions, what we'll do is my team or myself will reach out to you to schedule a quick initial call, just so we can get a little download on some of the pain points, and just to get a little more understanding on your respected business, if you will. And then we use that time to learn all about you. It arms us with the questions that we need answered. We go back, we put the audit together, and then we set up another follow-up call to go over what we found in the audit and our recommendations. And essentially all of this, people think that SEO is something that is extremely expensive. That's one thing that we pride ourselves on trying to make this affordable, especially given these times in COVID. So just know that it's not thousands of dollars a month for any type of local SEO package. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that is that's the presentation, and I'm happy to open it up for questions, comments, thoughts.
Thank you, Tom. That was amazing. That was a wonderful masterclass. So much really to dig into, and we are getting comments, lots of comments of gratitude. Say, "Wow, thank you! Can't wait to read your guide." So it sounds as though a good approach for someone to take that's just making a determination to do a better job with SEO might be to download your guide, do a little bit of pre-work, if you will, like
Exactly.
a little homework at the outset. Experiment with the Google My Business pages and the information that they're asking for there, and then maybe the next step would be to get in touch with you for the very generous complimentary audit that you also are putting forth. So that is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we try to, it can be a SEO at the end of the day. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of parts. So we try to not confuse folks, if you will. We try to take our step-by-step approach that has definitely worked for many local businesses, especially in Rhode Island. So
I bet you've taken all the steps needed to optimize your own listing as well.
Sure have.
I'm glad you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Commerce directories and various listings. So that, that reminds me to remind folks to make sure that all of our members have indeed optimized their own profile. It's easy to do. You can optimize your profile as often as you'd like, and there are lots of ways to do that. So I just mentioned that parenthetically. But Tom, let me just bounce a couple of questions off you based on your
Sure.
really terrific presentation. So if folks have done an SEO audit, say they've done it in the last, let's just put it out there and say 3 years, okay?
Mhm.
How much has changed in the SEO universe in the last 3 years? How often do you need to really refresh this?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So we look at SEO as more so a long-term strategy, right? SEO is rankings in SEO is changing literally day by day. There's competitors that are trying to do the same thing. If I'm a roofer and my competitor is a roofer, we might be trying to rank against those same keywords. So we have to make sure that we're continuously looking at our competition and building out an SEO profile over time, because we can't just get a business ranked on first page of Google for various keywords in, say, a month or two and then stop, because now you will stay there for a given period of time, but more and more as your competitors are right running behind you, they're gonna catch up, and they might outperform you, and which is going to just bump you down and bump you down. So at the end of the day, SEO, search engine optimization, really is a long-term investment that can pay dividends. So instead of paying for a Google pay-per-click campaign, essentially you're paying to be on that first page of Google. With SEO, you can get on that first page of Google in a more organic way. So to answer your question, Google is always releasing new algorithms and new updates. They just recently had another update. So if the last time an SEO audit was done, I would, for the folks that we work with, we do a full audit every 6 months. If we have an ongoing campaign, day over day, week over week, we are putting in our different strategies to make sure we are continuously building upon our ranks, and to make sure if our competitors do try to catch up, that we're still very far ahead of them.
Okay, so I think that's important to point out, that it's not a static dynamic, if you will, if that's not a contradictory term, but the idea that you have to keep working at it because your competitors, in fact, are calibrating their own listings based on what you're doing as well. So it's something that needs continuous attention.
Exactly. Yep.
So what about social media? What about having a regular presence on Twitter, posting a lot on Facebook, having a YouTube channel that features content, and linking all of those back to your main page? I imagine those are smart strategies as well. How, if you don't do that, are you handicapped?
So yeah, that's interesting. So actually, YouTube to rank to try to. So essentially, if you know YouTube, when you type in I don't know, how to lay concrete, right? You're going to see a bunch of different videos, and there's certain rank factors within those different platforms to get you shown. Now, if you have on your profile in YouTube, if you have your NAP, which is your name, address, phone number, that is the same name, address, phone number that you have on your Google My Business profile and your website, that essentially will act as another link or another directory. Similarly with the social media platforms as well. Now, the social media platforms don't show, they don't really have much of an influence on your rankings. They, of course, are really good for brand awareness, brand visibility, storytelling, trust, because essentially we know that when people are looking for local businesses, they're going to go to Google. And because if they type in your brand name, and you do have a Facebook profile, because Facebook is a very authoritative website as well, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to see a link to your Facebook profile on that first page of Google. So it's definitely important to also, at the end of the day, have a pretty good presence on your social media pages as well. But those won't dictate the way you rank.
What if you've changed your website URL? Do you have to essentially start over?
Yeah, so there's something called URL chronologization. So essentially, if you do have a new website, we would want to capture all of the website URLs, and there could be a lot of them, and we want to make sure that those are pointing or being redirected to the new website URL with the same backslash, if it's backslash menu, for instance. We want to make sure that that's similar on the old website is pointing to the new website. When we see a website refresh, or if a new website or a name change, there is a month or two that SEO rankings will drop. But over a period of time, once Google spider bots crawl your website over and over again, we see those rankings pick back up. But that's a great question.
Yeah, I mentioned that because I was listening to some conversation the other day. A company lost their URL. I think there was some mix up with the credit card. Anyway, it was bought by, a squatter, if you will, and out of reach for the business. So they had to basically, I think they said, start over, capture a whole new, URL for their stuff. So not a good thing. So any
people
advice?
People don't realize. So your URL, your website is really a piece of online real estate. You're building trust, you're building authority. Everyone's website has a dollar amount to it as well. There are some websites out there that businesses are sought after to get a listing or a blog on their website, because if your website is very mature, that is super helpful in Google's eyes, because they know that you've been trusted for this many years, and you're just going to build upon the trust. It's very similar to traditional real estate. The longer you have it, the more appreciates, the more value. So it's definitely important to also, to that point, to also make sure you have some security measures in place with your whoever is hosting your website, to make sure you have an SSL certificate, which is a security certificate. Most of the time, most of the websites that are built these days, you'll know if it has an SSL certificate because there'll be a little lock next to the website. And some browsers, especially in the US, if you go to a website that isn't secured, some browsers won't even let you get to that website. So I would definitely urge everyone to make sure those security protocols are put in place. Especially in the past probably 18 months, we've seen a lot of hacks. We've seen a lot of spammers that try to get into websites. They try to take them over. To your point, they might, if they take them over successfully, then they could sell it. And like I said, some websites do have a very hefty dollar amount to them. I remember back when Bing wasn't a thing, and I had a friend who used to buy and sell URLs in college. And he had one of his URLs was Bing Co, BING.co.com, I believe it was. He got a random call one day. Someone offered him a few $1,000s. He said, sure, why not? He was in college. Obviously, he could probably use the money at the time. And at the end of the day, he found out that it was actually Microsoft calling and purchasing the URL. To that point, he probably could have gotten tens of, not hundreds of thousands of dollars for that website. So, yeah.
So that is a thing, right? I always wondered if buying and selling URLs was really something that legitimate people do. Anyway, we do have a question from Cameron. He wants to know, can you let us know how important it is for us to be active on Alignable?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Alignable actually is a directory. So you can build out your directory right inside of Alignable. You can, it's not going to, so it will have the, if you have a good profile that's built out in Alignable, it will act as another directory signal for your ranking factors. So that's as simple as that gets. I mean, I like to use Alignable as well for networking and meeting new people, especially in a, I know things are now starting to open up, but especially when we are very virtual, I utilized Alignable just to meet new people or whatnot. But it will help you in having another profile and another directory citation.
Can you offer some advice on how chamber members can optimize their business profiles through the chamber to make sure that they're getting everything that they potentially could get as being listed in what you described as a trusted source and the online
Yeah,
directory?
sure. Yeah. So actually, Chamber of Commerce is one of the top 5 most authoritative websites on all of the web. Very, very close to Google, Facebook, Yelp. So it is important to have your profile built out. That includes your proper name that matches the proper name that matches what's on your Google My Business listing and your website. So all those 3 things need to be exactly the same. So your business name, if it is LevelUP Digital Solutions, if you use the LLC on your website and your Google My Business, you need to use that LLC on your Chamber of Commerce directory listing. Similarly, if you and the address needs to match as well. That's another very important aspect. The address, and it needs to have the same vernacular. So if you abbreviate road, RD, it needs to be the same across the board. If you put RD period, it needs to be the same. It's because of the search engines are just robots. They aren't as smart to know to make those type of changes. And also the last aspect is a phone number as well, making sure your phone number is whatever is on your Google My Business and your website is the same on the chamber directory. You can take it a step further and also put your email address and your web address, because having your website address is essentially going to link back to. That's the way Google's going to know how to link back to your website. You can also, if there's, I believe there's a place to put a description. You can put a keyword-rich description. So if I'm a plumbing company, and of course, probably plumbing services is probably one of those keywords that I want to rank for. You can very indirectly kind of build that into your directory description. Now, we don't want to just kind of put plumber near me, plumbing services, plumbing Warwick, plumbing Providence, because that's called keyword stuffing. And the spider bots do know what that means. And so it won't have any effect on your ranking. It just might have an adverse effect.
Mm-hmm. That's great. One of the other signals that you mentioned was reviews and the importance of having reviews. Question about that. When you look at reviews, a couple of things can happen. You mentioned the preponderance of negative reviews. People are more apt to put a negative review than a positive, just because that's human nature.
Right.
But also, like, sometimes if you look at reviews, you feel like they're, kind of fake, like they did them themselves, kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on both of those topics?
Yeah, so fake reviews have, it used to be something that you could do very easily. Now it's actually extremely hard to do, because what happens is you can only put a review on any given profile one time with your IP address. So if you try to leave the same review again, it might get posted, but it's going to be quickly removed. So that's one thing that Google has kind of safeguarded a bunch of different for for the Google profile in regards to reviews is knowing that you can't just a business owner or someone can't just go onto their profile and just start writing a bunch of reviews. It's if it's the same IP address and if it's the same Gmail account, you'll never be able to get a second review put on. And then some people will say they can make another free Gmail account, but again, it's linked to your IP address. So it's rather hard to spam, if quote unquote spam your reviews if you wanted to try to get a lot more of those 5-star reviews. Google actually just also did an update on trying to get off negative reviews that have been published to any given Google on your Google My Business profile. It used to be pretty hard, extremely hard to get any type of negative review removed. We know that we need at least 50 to 75 5-star reviews to counteract a 1-star review. So we put one of the services that we offer. We know that if we are actively asking for reviews, if people are more likely to not only fill out a 5-star review, but if they have a less than perfect experience, a part of in one of our services, there is actually a form fill. So the form fill opens up, and they're able to just leave their contact information and a comment about what happened, why they're frustrated, why they're mad, and that gets sent to the business owner on a very private and personal manner. So essentially, it never gets put on Facebook, Yelp, Google, etc. So it's our way of being proactive on asking for reviews, since we know having a strategy in place is important, but then having a safeguard put in place to make sure that if someone that we're sending a review request to might have a less than perfect experience, that we are giving them an avenue to express their concerns, but their concerns won't be publicly shared across all the different directories. And we're actually seeing a lot of really great success with being active with asking for reviews. And if we do see a negative feedback form come in, the business owner gets the alert in their email address to their email, and they call up and they talk with that customer or consumer. We've seen that less than perfect experience actually convert to a 4 or 5-star review. So we see that there's been a lot of we know that still having there is some concern about being active on asking for reviews, but at the end of the day, people like to hide behind their screen if they had a bad experience, and we're just giving them an avenue to leave their feedback, but without them really even knowing it's going to be handled in a private manner.
Thank you, Tom, for that. So we are at the top of the hour, and we only have a minute or two left. But before I leave you, Tom, I just want to give you this opportunity to repeat the generous offer that you have made to chamber members about how to get started. So back to you to remind folks what they can do right away.
Awesome. Yeah. So not only will we send out the free 8 steps guide for getting your Google My Business profile, but also if you want to take it the step further, visit us at levelupdigitalagency.com/chamber. And that's a special portal for chamber members. You fill out your name, your business address, your website, and then what we will do is we'll contact you to set up a quick initial discussion, just to have an open dialogue, and then we'll put together an audit. And like I said, there's no hard sells, there's no commitments. You're not going to get spammed. If anything, you'll walk away with a really great knowledge and understanding about where you currently stand in an online world.
And what could be more effective than that? So thank you, Tom. We've been talking with Tom Canterino from LevelUP Digital Solutions. This is Chamber TV. We've been live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We've we've gone through an incredible masterclass with Tom today about some of the steps everybody can take on their own and in association with professional counsel to drive more digital business. And of course, my favorite thing that you pointed out, Tom, was the trusted value of the Chamber of Commerce brand, one of the top 5. So that was pretty amazing. I guess I inherently knew that, but to hear someone as respected as you validate that was fantastic. So Thank you, everybody. Tom looks forward to hearing from you, and we will see you next time on Chamber TV.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.